I hope you guys enjoyed that special intro. That being said, welcome to a special edition of The Danny Show. I'm your host, Daniel Cody, and this is where I give commentary and reviews on all things wrestling. Thank you guys so much for joining. Let's get started on what is a continuance of a very interesting weekend because we still got Battleground and AEW's Double or Nothing coming up. But for right now, we got to celebrate the birthday of the architect, the visionary, Seth Freaking Rollins. That being said, this is part two of my top 10 favorite reviews. Let's get in. There is part one. Be sure to check that out. But for now, this is part two. Let's get started. At number 10, we have Seth Rollins versus Jinder Mahal on an early episode of NXT on August the 29th of 2012. It was the event where Seth Rollins would become the first ever NXT heavyweight champion, and there to witness that match was Dusty Rhodes and the man who would raise his hand in victory being Triple H. At number 9, we have Seth Rollins versus Shinsuke Nakamura at Survivor Series 2018 and what was becoming a traditional SmackDown versus Raw match. And Seth Rollins being Raw's Intercontinental Champion and Shinsuke being SmackDown's US Champion would fight off in what one of the commentators called a dream match for the ages. And this match did not disappoint at all. And both these guys were very great, but in the end, it was Seth Rollins that would win the match representing Raw. And if I'm not mistaken, I believe Raw won that year as well. And you can thank Seth Rollins in part for that. Number 8, we have Seth Rollins winning the Money in the Bank contract ladder match in 2014. Alongside himself, you had upcoming rival Dean Ambrose, now known as Jon Moxley, RVD, Kofi Kingston, and Jack Swagger, just to name a few that were in the match. This was a great match, in my personal opinion, and Kofi Kingston was really good in the match as well, being the high flyer that he is. But Seth Rollins had to overcome a superplex off the top of the ladder by his rival, Dean Ambrose, known at the time. But thanks to outside interference from Kane and a tombstone, Seth Rollins, who was aligned with Kane with the authority, would capitalize and climb the ladder to win the Money in the Bank contract. At number 7, we have, as I mentioned, Dean Ambrose. But this time, this is Seth Rollins versus Dean Ambrose, Hell in the Cell 2014, sometime after Money in the Bank. This match was good. The fact that both men were able to continue the match after falling halfway atop the cell was amazing. That wouldn't be the first time Seth Rollins fell halfway through the cell. The next time it would be helping Roman Reigns in a match that had a controversial ending. But this time it was Seth and Ambrose, aka Moxley, who would fall halfway atop the cell onto the announce tables, but still continue the match and continue to fight. And yes, there was outside interferences from Kane with a fire extinguisher. Now imagine that. Kane with a fire extinguisher. Bet he wish he had it when he was a kid. But Kane having a fire extinguisher and Seth Rollins power bombing Ambrose through the table were some of the highlights of that match. And when Ambrose, or should I say Mox, had that match won, we would see an interference from Bray Wyatt targeting Moxley to start a rivalry. But because of this, Seth Rollins would win this match thanks to Bray. At number 6, we're in the 6th minute, ironically. At number 6, we have Seth Rollins versus The Miz at Backlash 2018. This was a rematch for the amazing triple threat opening to WrestleMania 34 in New Orleans, which was an excellent match. But this particular match was a rematch because at that time, Miz was WWE Intercontinental Champion. And boy, did they have a great match. By the way, this was back when Miz was actually winning matches. Can we just point that out for a second? When's the last time Miz won a match? WrestleMania 38? No, yeah, yeah, yeah. It's been that long since I've seen Miz get his hand raised. Sheesh. But in any event, Seth and The Miz had an incredible match. The Miz would put two skull crushing finales on Seth Rollins. And Seth had to survive a figure four and two skull crushing finales and an almost hurt leg. But all it took was one curve stomp to win the match, retaining the Intercontinental Championship. Not to mention, Seth Rollins, like many of them, were very busy wrestlers because they traveled to the UK to come back as they do traditionally right around that time. But nonetheless, this match at Backlash, excellent. Number 5, this match was a great match on a losing effort, unfortunately, for Seth Rollins. And that was a match against Cody Rhodes at Hell in a Cell last year. Now, as we saw last night, Cody Rhodes fought with a broken arm and still put on a great match. Even though he lost, it wasn't because of a broken arm. This time, last year, Cody fought with a torn bicep muscle right here and had one of the greatest Hell in a Cell matches with Seth Rollins, who mocked Cody Rhodes' father, Dusty, with the polka dots. Not a good idea. But nonetheless, that was extra motivation. We saw tables. We saw an excellent performance from Seth Rollins. But it was, like I said, it was a losing effort on Seth's end. But it was still an excellent match. And I would encourage you to check that out. Next on this list at number 4, a match that Seth Rollins won, and that was a match against himself and Matt Riddle at Clash of the Castle. Let me just point this out. Seth was heel at the time, and Seth had said some very heelish things to build up for this match, especially with that promo where Riddle said, "The only man in your house is Becky, bro." Seth Rollins came back with the coldest heelish move ever. He said, "Oh, you want to talk about my family? Let's talk about yours." "Oh, yeah, that's right. You don't have one because your wife left you and your kids." That made things so personal. But despite it being so personal and Seth Rollins being heelish at the time, the fans at Clash of the Castle sung his symphony, and the match in itself was good. And the outfit, let me just say this, Seth Rollins' choices of outfits were very unique, and his choice of outfit at Clash of the Castle was very unique as well. This was a great match, but in around that time, Matt Riddle became a bit of his own worst enemy during that match. And despite it being good on both ends, Riddle's mistakes would help Seth Rollins win this match. And by the way, that match was much needed for Seth to win because if you look back on 2022, Seth didn't have a lot of good pay per views. He almost beat Roman at Royal Rumble 2022, but 2022, as far as pay per views were concerned, were just not Seth's year. So thankfully, Seth is winning more pay per views lately. I'm really appreciative of that. And that was the first start of him winning on pay per view. Thank you, WWE and Triple H. Next on this list, we have another match that was great, but on a losing effort. At number three is Seth Rollins versus Edge, Hell in a Cell. Ironically, this took place in Saudi Arabia, and ironically, it was a great opening match. This was good. This was a settlement match. And let me just say this, why was the Hell in a Cell normal colors this year as opposed to that time being red? This year's Hell in a Cell match between Finn and Edge should have been red. I'm just saying. It fits because of the demon. But in any event, this match was very good, and Seth was very unique. To do super kicks with a chain tied to his boot was very extreme and unique as well. But nonetheless, despite the fact that Edge won this match, the match in itself was still great to watch from both perspectives, whoever you're celebrating. Moving forward to number two, a recent match that took place this year, and that was at WrestleMania 39 with Seth Rollins versus Logan Paul. I had the pleasure of reviewing this. First of all, the crowd was awesome. The special entry was awesome. Um, Logan Paul accidentally frog splashing KSI was funny. Not to mention, some of you, 300 people saw the review I did, 340 plus saw the review I did on Roman Reigns, mentioning KSI and all the YouTubers while having Logan Paul in the headlock. This time it was Logan Paul losing to Seth Rollins, and I needed Seth to win this match because he's just so over. He won the match. The match was awesome. Thankfully, Seth Rollins won this match. I needed him to win. Despite the fact that Logan had the knockout punch, Seth Rollins stumped out Logan Paul, who had a special entrance that was almost like Shawn Michaels. But nonetheless, ours truly is the man. Now, moving forward, let's go to the last match, the number one pick on this list, and that is the recent match between himself and AJ Styles at yesterday's Night of Champions. Let's be honest, we all knew that Rollins was going to win this match. Now, there was some support on both ends because if you listen closely, there was some AJ Styles chants, and AJ Styles and Seth Rollins are great together, and this was a prime example. AJ stole Triple H's and Seth Rollins' pedigree, but nonetheless, it was still a great match, and as expected, Seth Rollins, with his golden fingernails, won this match. And what's ironic is that we started this countdown with Triple H raising Seth Rollins' hands with the match at number 10 on this list, and the match at number 1 ended the same way it was years ago, and that was Triple H raising the hand of the new Raw World Heavyweight Champion, Seth Freaking Rollins. So, let me know in the comments, what did you think about this review and which Seth Rollins match was your favorite? This is part 2. Part 1 is also up. Be sure to check that out. But for now, that's all the time I have for you today. And I'm your host, Daniel Cody, and I'll be back with another great review on all things wrestling. Let's continue to have a good weekend because we got a lot of great stuff to watch coming up. So until next time, stay cool, everybody.